Hello. Passionate about sustainability, energy and climate? You're in the right place. Welcome to Energetic. I'm Maureen Cornelis, and together we will engage with people who dedicate their lives to climate justice and making a just energy transition happen. They may be activists, scientists, policymakers, or other enthusiasts, just like you. Let their life stories and insights inspire you to build a better future for people and the planet. Hello and welcome to this episode of Energetic. My guest today is Anna Gombau, and she may sound familiar to you because she's one of those people you cannot miss in the energy policy bubble. She's an excellent journalist and moderator who's been around for many years now. And today, as it's the very last episode of 2024, I wanted to reflect on what this year brought us on the energy policy side and what the future holds for 2025. And since it's been almost 3 years since we had a chat with Anna on the podcast, I also wanted her to tell us about her news. Anna, welcome to the show.
Hi, Maureen. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited.
Yeah, you look excited. It's great. Thank you, Anna. So how have you been since our previous episode back in early 2022?
I did not realize it's been that long since we had that episode. Like, I thought somehow in my head, I thought it was like maybe, just about 2 years or something like that. But it's true, it's almost been 3 years. Like, it was indeed beginning of 2022. So I guess a lot of things have stayed the same and a lot of things have happened at the same time. I guess just like everyone else, really. So I feel it's a bit of the same but different feeling. I mean, I'm still working as a freelancer. I still do pretty much the same kind of offering in the field of communications and events and trainings with a focus on energy, climate, and sustainability. So from this point of view, things haven't changed that much. But I do feel inevitably, in a matter of 3 years, which is, in fact, like as long as how long I've been freelancing, I feel like you change a lot in terms of indeed what you learn and what you feel you can bring to the world, the confidence that you have in yourself and in your own work. So I really feel that difference compared to, just about 3 years ago when I was talking about a lot of things, but like I really didn't know exactly what the reality was or like even where this whole freelancing adventure would take me.
That's great to hear. And I mean, I think it's also about the journey, right? And the people you bring along with you on this journey. And full disclaimer, Anna and I have been talking a lot during these 3 years. We've been now meeting a lot, you in Brussels, in Turin and elsewhere. And it's been really a joy to see you grow and see you thrive in your various endeavors and always putting at the center of your work this knack for communication, the ability to communicate difficult concepts to broad audiences. And whether it is as a journalist or as a moderator. So really, I've been following this and given all the activities that you have been following. So getting back to 2024. So what have been, according to you, the biggest news and the biggest focus of 2024?
Definitely. Yeah, I think a lot has been going on. And on the one hand, it does feel like yesterday when we had our conversation, but then it also feels that the past years have really gone by so fast. I don't know if it's because we've been going practically from one crisis after the other. And somehow we're always a little bit with our alarm and our defense mechanisms up and always running around to find solutions and scrambling to find solutions to the challenges that we have found ourselves in. I feel there's a lot that can be said about 2024. I mean, I'm guessing the most obvious one and definitely one that I think was expected is the fact that if we look at the EU policy files, we've seen the Fit for 55 package almost nearly completed. Definitely, majority of files have either been agreed. A lot of them have already even entered into force. We've been seeing a lot of efforts for organizations and companies and to adapt to all the different regulations and directives and requirements that should help us get into the at least 55% emission reduction by 2030. So I think this was probably an expected conversation that at least I think we were all hoping for. I think everyone wants a certain degree of regulatory certainty. I guess probably the word this year, if I look back into the past year or so, it's been the question of competitiveness and the question about industries, how we make the energy transition in a way that is also competitive for them and that we don't lose jobs. We ended last year with first the news and then the actual entry into force of the Inflation Reduction Act in the US. And I think it was towards the end of last year that we actually started mobilizing to respond to it and to understand what the actual impact is going to be for our industries. And this year has been the year really of reaction to it in the EU institutions, where the attention has been heightened to it, where we also see a bunch of bad news for our industry. A lot of our main powerhouses shutting down factories across Europe. So we're seeing a clear shift in the narrative. And maybe that brings me back to the question about what has changed since 2022. I think after in 2022, we were at the height of the energy price crisis. There was a strong social narrative to our energy transition. I don't really see that anymore, and I don't really see how the shift to competitiveness is going to continue upholding that. So actually, as someone who works on the social aspects of the energy transition, I was actually very curious to see how you perceive that.
So it's a cross interview. I'm really happy to answer to that. Yeah. No, what I've been seeing is also, as you said, okay, so we've had the kind of multiple crises. This year, we've been finalizing a few of the legislative files that have been bolstering ambitions really on the climate and energy fields. And indeed, the kind of social dimensions have been moving in the background. But I think it's more like a shift. Like you mentioned, competitiveness. It's one of the keywords of this infamous Draghi report that was released at the beginning of September 2024. And really, this competitiveness, it really cannot happen if you don't have the workforce that is actually able to boost to work in the factories that we need in Europe. And if the work conditions of the people are not improved, and if the life of the people are not improved in general. So in a way, my impression is more that it becomes like the kind of something that was seen as kind of radical, like advocating for social justice was something kind of radical. Now it has become part of the energy DNA. And by the way, energy is mentioned also several times in the energy poverty is mentioned several times in the Draghi report. Which is, I think a report released 10 years ago would never have mentioned energy poverty several times. And like the energy price crisis and the fact that it was challenging the life of the people, that it was challenging their way of life, that it was harming in many ways the Europeans is something that matters tremendously. And another thing that I've noticed this year, and I think we will have a lot of focus on this in the years to come, is the fact that energy poverty now is people in energy poverty, they, through EU directive, EU legislation, etc., they tend to be quite shielded. Now, of course, it's about member states to implement it. And I would like to refer to the episode that I recorded with Sunderland a few weeks ago, to really, because there are some really interesting viewpoints on this. But I think one of the aspects that is totally tied with the idea of competitiveness is the idea that we also need to embark the middle class. We need to embark SMEs. We need to embark people who don't enter in the category of vulnerable or energy poor consumers. And that's also quite an interesting shift, I think, on the energy and climate field as well. And on this, I've been thinking too about really how you build the trust that is needed, because one of the ways to build the trust is, of course, communicating well, as you do, Anna, in your work. But it's also about how the businesses, how the policymakers do communicate in a way that more people feel that the transformation we are living is also for them. And with the political changes, the parliament that has shifted way more to the right than in the previous elections, I think all of this do a difference in the way we need to approach things. And you mentioned the US, but that's a whole other story, because in 2025, we will see a Trump coup coming, and that will make a huge difference, right? So it's also about, I think it's it's no longer about having a conversation separating, if you want, the social dimensions and the energy transition dimension, but how you bring them together. And on top of that, you add the, let's say, climate emergency that is becoming pressing by the day. So my 2 cents on this is that we need to go beyond the crisis and build something that is resilient, and that Europe needs to build just resilience, right? Not only resilience, but a resilience that is also fair and inclusive and take people on board if they are extremely vulnerable, energy poor, etc., and if they are also from other segments of the population.
Yeah, indeed. I'm guessing that one of the big achievements also the year after all has been in ensuring that we have all these safeguards for the people who need it the most. I was reading today a post from my friends at Consultancy Sustainable Public Affairs in Brussels, and how they were making the case of how heating and cooling has become one of the topics, or like became one of the big topics in 2024, and like everything that has been achieved in this front, and it's decarbonization, which at the end of the day should also protect our most vulnerable consumers as well. So definitely a big topic. So that I guess we finally put much more attention to. I think this year has been a lot about sort of defining a lot about problem definition. We saw first of all, there was the Letta report on the EU single market and how we deepen the EU single market, and how fragmentation is still a big obstacle to the competitiveness at the end of the day and to the progress of our economies. Better that if we act as one big market rather than as 27 bigger or smaller economies, of course. Then became the Draghi reports that deepened into the competitiveness aspect. And there were a lot of issues related to the energy transition. One of the big topics I feel that we finally started to talking about towards the end of last year or this year is a bit our infrastructure, the grids, the massive amount of investments that we need to do to modernize and upgrade and expand our grids. So this year we've done a lot of talk about the problem definition. Now I think it's really a matter of seeing the action and how do we implement this in practice.
You remember I interviewed you very briefly in June during the European Sustainable Energy Week for a special episode called "The Dog Who Caught the Bus." And 6 months after, I'm still not sure that the EU knows exactly what to do from that bus. Maybe it's a little bit clearer now. Also because we have this new European Commission, we have these new commissioners that are on board, but of course they started only a few weeks ago, so they are not completely up to speed, but things are accelerating at many different levels, right? So those are dimensions that will need to be followed very closely in the year to come. Another topic I think that has been quite huge this year, but next year will be gigantic, is AI and all the automation, right? And this has an impact on the energy sector as well. You mentioned grid, how grid can be automatized in a way, but yeah, there are other ways that really the digitalization can affect people. And for this, I worked with the Economic and Social Committee on what are the impacts the digitalization could have on end users and consumers, people, really everyday people. And I'm not sure that the EU policymakers have done enough work on this topic yet.
Well, I mean, I think, listen, I'm not that versed into the whole conversation around digitalization within the energy sector. So just to make a disclaimer here, I guess that's also very telling about the state of the discourse and the state of the matter. The fact that I do see a bunch of events on the digitalization, the energy sector, a few panel discussions, workshops, etc. But there are still very expert group focused. Like it's still a very nerdy conversation that only a few are involved in, either because they are the organizations who are indeed deepening the digitalization of the energy transition, or either because now they're starting to feel touched by it, or because there are few organizations that actually can invest in having the expertise on this matter. But it just feels indeed a very nerdy conversation for a few. I guess this is a little bit what we used to have before about, I don't know, maybe talking about, or we talked about, I don't know exactly about grades. There are conversations, certain conversations that used to be, let's say, like on the very
On the edge, in a way.
on the sides, I have to say.
Yeah.
But now they've become part of the mainstream.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this year will be the year where we start talking about digitalization in more open debates, and when it becomes really part of our perhaps mainstream conversation within the sector, indeed.
Yeah, yeah. For the time being, it's in many ways it still feel like one of those bad words. Oh, digitalization. Oh, we're gonna lose people if we talk about that. Or AI. We're gonna lose people if we talk about that. But actually, no. It's really important that we work on it now to have a European way of doing things that really respects privacy, that respects the governance and the architecture of all those tools, and brings the transparency that we've been advocating for years on different sectors. And I think it's one of those areas where we could really miss the bus if we don't jump in a little bit sooner. But for this, I feel that sometimes it's more like businesses are a little bit more aware of that than really policymakers.
I think so. And I mean, let's say if we don't draw more attention into it, if also we don't make it part of our of educational curriculum at all levels, in a few years we're going to have the same conversation as we have now about the lack of skills in the energy sector. So it's always going to be like that. Yeah, technology will always be faster and faster. We really need to catch the bus, really, because otherwise we're going to be having the same and be facing the same bottlenecks over again.
Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, we can't have proper competitiveness if we kind of don't break the bottlenecks, right? So it's, I mean, you mentioned the grid. So there are the grid bottlenecks. It's starting to be quite a big topic. There is this digitalisation issue. There is this competitiveness challenge, the skills, as I mentioned. There are also this kind of, the divide between what everyday people expect their governments to do, and they expect them to solve climate change, and that to be put on the back of their mind. And the kind of issue with how slowly we are going to. And that puts a lot of defined problems on the table. What should we be looking after in 2025, in your view?
Sure. I have a bunch of ideas in my head. So maybe I will start with a very perhaps broad picture and then perhaps go a little bit into the specifics. I mean, we were talking just now about indeed how I think 2024 has been a bit of the year where we were, let's say, putting a name to the problems that we are facing, the bottlenecks that we are facing. And I mean, we have sound evidence and sound policy recommendations that can help us tackle these problems. I think the main bottleneck, or perhaps one of the big bottlenecks that we are still going to face right now, is the fragility of our political systems as we talk. I mean, if we look at the EU level of the new European Commission, we struggled a lot actually to get that Commission approval because of party political infighting, because of the feud between the APP and the SND, or like this and that. And if we don't confirm your executive vice president, they won't confirm our executive vice president, and this kind of thing. So the von der Leyen Commission started in a very fragile flooring.
Yeah.
Whether these differences are going to stay or they're really going to be acting as the college of commissioners that they are expected to be is there to be seen. I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
But that's already, I think, a factor to take into account, that there's going to be divisions within the new commission, and I think the political parties are going to want to exploit that. We already see a lot of fragilities at national level. We're going to have an election in Germany. France is also in a big political uncertainty once again. So when our two largest economies and the ones that should be leading by example when it comes to implementing the recommendations of the EU single market, also that are highly concerned with the question of competitiveness, are not working, or let's say are in such a state of fragility, it's going to be very difficult, I think, to follow through on many of the ideas, or to its depth, or deepening the single market, etc., etc. So I think in terms of big picture, seems like a quite unstable foundation to be working at the moment, not to mention what you already said, the increased polarization of the European Parliament and so on, which is going to make it difficult to pass on legislation. I think there's a big conversation ongoing for some months now among organizations on how do we engage with political groups right now. I don't have a clear-cut answer to it, honestly. I think it's a very sensitive conversation that organizations need to have.
You, listener, do have a clear answer to that? Please drop us an email and welcome to the show.
This is absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm always curious to see how different organizations from NGOs, from consultancies, from corporations are approaching that, definitely, because it's a new playground that we are finding ourselves in right now. So yeah, everyone's adapting their advocacy tactics in there to try to achieve their interests. So yeah, I guess one of the big questions is how we are going to be following through with the recommendations of those reports. Are we actually going to do something about it, or is the kind of report, or are those kind of reports that are going to be shelved in the Le Monde archives and gather dust, and people will forget about it in a year or so? We could catch up next year and discuss about it. So I see perhaps as two important factors to take into account. And then we're going to continue having conversations about our future, about our targets, how we achieve them, will we achieve them, what do we do moving forward. Fit for 55 package was approved, like all the measures that should lead us to our 2030 target are put into legislation. We have 5 years to act. A lot of voices are already thinking that we are not going to be achieving these targets. And there's a lot of conversation around the 2040 targets. To which extent should we be ambitious? To which extent should we even have one? To which extent should we even start discussing one? Who should bear the burden of the implementation of these targets? Last week I was moderating the EU Agri-Food Days. So I had several panel discussions where I had many farmers. Also, as a result of the farmers' protests of the past couple of years, the farmers' protests will continue, but there's going to have to be a serious conversation on what's the distribution of the target across sectors. So that's going to be, I think, one of the big insights at EU level.
Yeah, and that completely echoes what I said earlier about the addressing middle class, addressing SMEs, and making sure they are part of the conversation and not put on the side, because they are actually the backbone of European societies, and they need to be taken on board and not be only bypassers that are taken as afterthoughts, right? It's at the end, it has trickled down to everybody and be one of these big fundamental center if we want. There is another issue or let's say argument that I would like to tell you about, because I know you've been very active on this front, is really about gender equity. I'm as passionate as you about putting more women in leadership position and making sure the voice of women and of minorities are heard. So you've been working a lot this year on this topic too. Can you tell us why it does matter so much, and what are your hopes on really this issue for the years to come?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, thanks for bringing this perspective, which definitely touches very close to what I do. So in my spare time, the little spare time I have, volunteering with an organization called the Brussels Binder. For those who may not know what the Brussels Binder is, it's essentially a database of women experts not necessarily based in Brussels, but mostly the vast majority are either Brussels-based or perhaps Europe-based, broadly speaking. But it's an answer to a trend that the organization had seen for many years, which is still the prevalence of all-male panels in the events in many sectors. The idea is to answer to the excuse of we couldn't find any woman to speak at this panel on this topic. Now, when people tell us that, we say, well, you have this database of experts that you can look into, so please make use of it. It's a public database. Everyone can access it. And if there's any women experts listening, well, I believe that all professional women are experts in their fields. So I would encourage everyone to sign up to the Binder. But definitely, I feel that representation really matters. First of all, you cannot be what you cannot see. And I think this is something that in the energy sector is clear that, for instance, at the policy side, we see more and more women. It is fairly gender balanced, I think. But when it comes to the more perhaps industry side and the more perhaps, and the technical side especially, we still see a vast domination of men. Basically white men, basically. And it's time to really change that, especially when we see the lack of women in leadership positions, the lack of, that there's plenty still of glass ceilings to be tackling. Yeah, I don't even know what to say because I could ramble for hours about it.
Yeah, no, it's
Scandalous that we still really have to justify why we are doing this and why this is important. I mean, that says a lot about the state of the conversation still. Huh?
absolutely. I mean, the numbers, they are not changing. They haven't been changing for years. We have about 23% of women in the energy sector, but most of them are, let's say, in the administrative positions, not really in leadership position, not really in technical position either. So there are different initiatives. There is also the equity platform of the energy sector led by the European Commission. There is Women in Climate. I mean, if you see one of those organizations, I sign up to all of them because I think it's really important to make some noise. And I mean, we need as many echo of those initiatives as possible. And I think it's not only about being like sharing the good practice, but also fostering a sense of sorority and showing that there are some ways things are possible, and really having different narratives as well around the energy sector that is not only technical, it's something very intellectual. There are different ways, and that it's actually okay to voice your opinion. You don't have to please everybody all the time. And I mean, the exercise that we are doing today, that's really commenting on the news of the year, I must say it's not something that I usually do on the podcast. So this even can be a little bit intimidating. But of course, we are both experts as others are, so we should step in, right? So this is an example of vulnerability and how you really, despite feeling this kind of fear and this sense of uneasiness or like inadequacy, we would still go for it. So if you, dear listener, have something to say and think that we are not up to the job, well, it's time to stop listening to this podcast, otherwise to give us 5 stars. But now I would like to focus on you, Anna. So you have a big project for 2025. You aim to resonate. Tell me more about it.
Right. Yes. Where do I even begin? I also get very excited about this. I think it's been a while since I've been doing a little bit of the soul searching about what is it that I want to do, my career, what my biggest strengths are, where can I bring the best out of myself and the best out of my expertise.
Was it 3 years ago on Energetic?
Maybe. I believe we had this conversation several times on the microphone and behind the scenes as well, especially behind the scenes. I think, you're someone who also talking a little bit what has changed since 2022. Indeed, I think I gained a close friend whose advice I really take by heart.
Thank you so much.
So we can end this on a candid note, right? So for a long time, I was wondering, like, okay, what is it that I want to do? Well, like, I'm interested in many things. I mean, of course, I'm interested in providing expertise in the energy transition and communications. I enjoy moderating events. I enjoy training people. I enjoy seeing people use their voices for change. And like, I was trying to find, like, okay, like, what's this like common thread? Like, what is this exactly? Something. What is this thing that I'm trying to do? I think I needed some concepts, some taglines, something to put an actual name to it. And I realized that what I wanted was to create something that resonates. So I want to let people make their voices resonate with an audience and that their message goes through so it resonates. I want to create events that involve the audience, that resonate. I want organizations to enact campaigns that resonate to their audiences and drive actual change. So I realized that there was this concept there that encompassed everything that I wanted to do. So starting in 2025, I'm launching my own, I don't know how to call it, consultancy, agency, something where I'm gonna bring my expertise and all my skills to helping change makers resonate. So I'm really excited about it. Yeah. And just like laying the foundations, creating the website, creating the brand identity. Tomorrow I'll even be visiting an office. Maybe by the time podcast goes out, I already have signed a contract. That I'm really excited about. And I think there's going to be, I'm convinced there's going to be some opportunities for collaboration as well with next energy consumer.
Absolutely. And there will always be a place for you for Resonate to for you to resonate within energetic. It's always a joy to talk with you, Anna, and I'm all about collaboration and to learn from each other. So Anna, it's been a delight to end 2024 with this episode with you. Our listeners can follow you along LinkedIn. And I'm looking super forward to catching up again in 2025 and see where all these beautiful ideas and sounds resonate. Pun intended.
Thank you, Marine. I wish you all the best also for this year ahead for 2025. Excited to see all the sorts of cool stuff you always do.
Thank you so much, Anna. And happy holidays to our listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Energetic. It's been a pleasure diving deep into the world of sustainability and the just energy transition with some of the most forward-thinking mouths out there. I'm Marine Cornelis, your host from policy consultancy Next Energy Consumer, and it's been an incredible journey growing this podcast together with you, our knowledgeable and passionate listeners. Since 2021, we've shared countless stories, insights, and ideas over more than 40 episodes, and it's all thanks to your support and enthusiasm. If you enjoyed our journey so far and want to help us keep the conversation going, why not support us on Patreon? Every bit helps us bring more inspiring content your way. Check out the show notes for the link. And hey, if you're a part of an organization that shares our passion for a sustainable and inclusive energy future, we're excited to explore sponsorship opportunities with you. It's a fantastic way to connect with a dedicated audience and make an even bigger impact together. Shout out to the fantastic Igor Mihailovich from Podcast Media Factory for his incredible sound design work, making every episode a joy to listen to. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Energetic on your favorite podcast platform. And if you think a friend or a colleague could benefit from our episode, we'd love for you to spread the word. It helps us grow and keep the energy transition conversation alive. Sharing is caring. Follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to stay engaged and update on all things energetic. Thanks once again for lending your ears. Until next time.